Hey, how's it going? Welcome back or welcome. So these days I've been leaning more into sensual styles. And I mean, it probably has something to do with the weather being hot and naturally I'm just showing a bit more skin. And I feel like these styles suit me quite well and I've always felt that way even at a much younger age. But I've never really thought much in depth about what exactly about my essence or which exact features make me feel this way. So it got me thinking, what makes a face come across as sexy or sensual? And I think that especially in North America, when we think a sexy face or features that make a face look sexy, immediately we think about features like smoldering eyes or luscious lips, because there's this level of ferocity and intensity created with the eyes that adds this striking and assertive and charismatic image. And you combine that with full voluminous lips and you get your typical modern description of what sexy is supposed to look like. But I actually think that there's a more subtle feature that can contribute to this vibe, and it's none other than the chin. Because if you think about it, two faces can have very similar looking eyes or lips, but the shape and the structure of the lower face also plays a pretty big role in creating the overall essence or the image of the person. If we look at sisters like Bella and Gigi Hadid, for example, or Kim Kardashian, Kendall Jenner, I think that in particular, one of the main differences between these faces is the sharpness of the chin. I don't really know if there's a scientific explanation for this. I mean, I would assume that a sharper chin tends to elongate the face more, so it adds a bit more maturity to the face naturally. Or it could be because a pronounced chin tends to draw more attention to the lips area, so that could be another reason. Whatever it is, I thought it'd be fun to focus on talking about this feature today and how it contributes to the overall vibe or the essence of the face. Now, this is a feature that I've brought up in many of my previous videos, and I've used myself as an example specifically because I do have a bit of a pointy chin. And to be honest, this used to be a pretty big insecurity for me growing up. I remember always looking into the mirror with my chin covered like this, and I would think to myself, oh, I just wish my chin was slightly shorter. Like, I wish I could just shave this little bit off and my face would be so much better. And I know some of you might be wondering why. Like, if it's a feature that adds sexiness, then isn't that a good thing? But I really think it's just a difference in beauty standards. I'm very heavily influenced by the Korean culture just based on who I've grown up around and who I've hung out with throughout my teenage and most of my young adult years. So even though I was physically in North America, I've always been very heavily influenced by the beauty standards that exist in Korea. And if you know anything about East Asian beauty standards, looking young and cute and youthful is sort of they're considered the most desirable trait no matter what. I know things are changing a lot there these days, but still I feel like looking as youthful as possible and as cute as possible it's just something that trumps everything. And always being told that I look much older than my actual age throughout my teens and my early 20s, and also having a best friend that happens to have this like forever child face, I feel like these experiences just fostered a pretty negative association with this specific trait for me. Obviously, now that I am getting older and looking youthful isn't always the highest priority for me now, I think in recent years, I've finally started to see this feature as something that could be positive than negative. Now, what I think is really interesting about the chin is that the effects are much more subtle than the eyes or the lips when it comes to adding that sexy or sensual vibe. Because like I said, with features like smoldering eyes, there's such a high level of intensity that's added to the look that sort of screams charisma. And similarly, full luscious lips tend to enhance an obvious softness and femininity in the overall look. But I think the effect of the chin is much more subtle in comparison, and it adds this sort of je ne sais quoi quality to the overall look. And dare I say that the effect is also much more interesting depending on the rest of the face and the facial features. So I'm gonna give you a few pop culture examples to help explain what I'm talking about, and I'm gonna provide specific specific explanations in relation to these characters' overall style and how the actresses that play these roles contribute to adding that subtle sexiness to these character styles. With that said, the first example is Rachel Green from Friends, played by Jennifer Aniston. And I would describe Rachel's style as easygoing girl next door with a hint of sexy. Because Rachel's not really your typical, like, smoldering in your face kind of sexy girl, but there is an undeniable sexy element to her style. Rachel's style is very chic, minimal, easygoing, approachable, and there's a hint of sexiness, but it's not overly revealing or form-fitting or provocative in any way. And I think that this is portrayed so well through Jennifer Aniston playing the role of Rachel. And I know that many people will probably reference her natural essence, like the bluntness in the bone structure and the nose that creates this level of approachability in Jennifer's look. But I actually think it's her eyes that plays a very big role. Because Jen's eyes are quite open in the inner corners, and I find these eyes to add a lot of kindness to the face. And it also adds this relaxed appearance because the upper eyelid sort of slopes down in a more elongated way, and that's what I think adds this approachable and sweet look to her. It's sweet, but it's not girlish. Like, if we think about Rachel, she is definitely relaxed and easygoing, but not in that sort of youthful, girlish kind of way. So I think that approachable element mixed in with a hint of maturity is what gives Rachel's style that subtle sexiness without it being overly loud. And I think that's why Jennifer Aniston was so perfect for the role of Rachel. The second example I have is Elle Woods from the movie Legally Blonde, played by Reese Witherspoon, as we all know. And I would describe Elle's style as feminine and preppy with a hint of sexy. Again, Elle is not your typical smoldering, sexy kind of character, but there is still something sexy about her style. She wears a lot of figure-hugging silhouettes, garments with deep cleavage, and she shows quite a bit of skin, but not in a skimpy, provocative sort of way. So I would describe Elle's style as preppy, feminine, definitely pink dominant, and she likes accentuating her sexiness, but it comes across as this bright, cute, and endearing sort of way. And I think that that's portrayed so well through Reese Witherspoon playing the role of Elle Woods. Because Reese has these bright, curious eyes and a very expressive face, and that's what creates that sweet and endearing look about her. And the high cheekbones also add a lot of vitality to her look. So I think the high energy and the spark created in her eyes with a hint of that subtle sexiness added through the sharp and pronounced chin, the combination of these two features suits that preppy, feminine, yet sexy style of Elle Woods. I personally think this is why that element of sexiness is just a little bit more pronounced in the movie version of Elle as opposed to the musical adaptations. I mean, I obviously have not watched all of the musical versions of Legally Blonde, but I just think that Reese Witherspoon's overall essence contributes so much to adding that subtle sexiness to Elle Woods' style, specifically in the movie version. Now, the third example I have is Jacqueline White from Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, played by Jane Krakowski. And I would describe Jacqueline's style as elegant and dramatic with a hint of sexy. Now, again, if we look at Jane Krakowski's eyes, her eyes are also sloped down slightly, but it's not necessarily because of the shape of the upper eyeline, but rather because of the angle of the eyes themselves. So unlike Jennifer Aniston's eyes, Jane's eyes are quite sharp in the inner corners. And the sharpness combined with the downturned angle creates this dramatic yet relaxed image, and it adds more of an elegant and sharp feeling rather than an approachable or easygoing feeling. There's also a lot more sharp and straight lines found in the face, with the bone structure in the nose and the shape and the volume of the lips. So all of these features combined with the eyes add an elegant yet dramatic look mixed in with a hint of sexiness. And I think this is why it was so fitting for Jane Krakowski to play the role of Jacqueline, because Jacqueline is this wealthy socialite, so she dresses in a very luxurious and opulent style, but there is a hint of drama and a subtle sex appeal to her look. And if you've watched the show at all, the story of Jacqueline is that she was a former flight attendant and she married her husband through an affair. So her husband left his former wife for Jacqueline. So there's that danger of the other woman that is portrayed so well through the style of Jacqueline and also through the essence of Jane Krakowski. Right, so those are some of the pop culture examples I had, and all these three actresses happen to have blonde hair and very pronounced and sharp chin, and I think that they can all embody that subtle sexiness in the characters they play so well. But what I think is really interesting is the overall vibe or the essence of each of these faces are also so very different at the same time. And that just helps show how sexy can be interpreted in many different ways according to the uniqueness of each face. Now, I know those were all very well-known pop culture examples and they all happen to be Caucasian examples. So I'm gonna pop some more images of actresses or media personalities of various ethnicities with that same common feature, just to give you more variety. And in my opinion, these faces all embody that subtle sexiness in their own unique ways, depending on not only the rest of the facial features, but also on proportional factors and even body types. And it's just so interesting how, based on all of these factors, you can create very distinct and unique vibes. And some of them like to play up their sexiness a bit more, while others like to offset it a bit. And I think that just goes to show and prove that there is no one single right or wrong answer when it comes to style, and all of them are beautiful and sexy in their own ways, and is really about what and how you make of it. So I hope this video gave you some food for thought and perhaps something that you didn't really care to think about before. Maybe the next time you look at yourself in the mirror, this could be a chance for you to think about what it is that makes your face so distinctly and uniquely you. I hope you liked the video, and I'll see you in my next one. Until then, stay unique and stay gorgeous.